3 things today I need you to understand before you leave here that could disrupt one of these events. First thing being is the attack cycle. Let's go left of bang and before the gun comes on campus, before the person starts at attack, and look at the attack cycle. I modified this a little bit from a terrorist attack cycle, but again, we're not dealing with terrorism, we're dealing with active shooters, and I kind of compressed it a little bit. So in the planning phase, you'd normally look for people, conducting different types of plans, writing things down, gathering information. What they find is active shooters, it's actually pretty hard to spot them in the planning phase unless you specifically have like overt evidence of a plan written down. So it's kind of happening internal at that point. And the planning phase can take anywhere from up to a day, a week, even up to months and years. But again, it's harder to, and I can't see some type of mental snap happening in that person necessarily that far out. But now when we get to the preparation phase means I'm physically doing certain actions and behaviors in further into the crime. I'm getting ready to commit this crime, and boom, that's where our active shooter pops up in our neighborhood. This is the first point. This is at the first point we can observe these behaviors and go, wait a minute, let's slow this down a little bit. I think I got something. And then you actually have a little bit more time before people start dying, and that's the movement to contact. So I'm done preparing all my stuff. Now I'm going to the facility with my guns and bombs and knives, and I'm going to start shooting. But again, that's a time frame. Let's say movement to contact, I just got onto the parking lot. I have to assemble my rifle. I've got to grab my gear out of the thing, and I'm moving to the school. That time in between is our movement to contact. This is precious seconds and minutes you have to disrupt an active shooter before the violence, because once shots are fired, now we're just cleaning up the mess. Now we're just cleaning up the mess at this point. So it's a much smarter equation to start looking at this stuff beforehand. Specifically, this section right here, I like to call it my time to defend. Why do I call it that? Think about that. An active shooter event, what is your time to defend? If someone walks into a room right where you're sitting right now with a gun out pointed at you, how much time do you have to defend against being shot? Okay, it's sub-seconds, 1-2 seconds maybe. It's not looking good for you. It's all bad at this point. You don't have a lot of TTD. So what you'd want to do in a situation is maximize your TTD. Do something that's going to give me a couple more seconds. So I'm going to take my coffee cup or my Monster and huck it at that person's head. Guess what? That bought me 3 more seconds, all right? In terms of left of bang, if we can spot these things, we have much more time to defend. At the closest point before shots are fired, movement to contact, seconds and minutes, okay, it's not a lot of time, but seconds can mean a world of difference in an active shooter situation. So that's what I want to do with here is get that concept, understand that we want to maximize our time to defend. Look, y'all see what he grabbed right there? See what he grabbed? Let's go back. And that's a security badge. And he's grabbing that to bypass all the security you've put in place in that entire building. So go ahead and run, hide, fight that. Did you see all those people? Again, this is a drill. That wasn't real, but run, hide, fight that when someone walks in there. So when you think in terms of run, hide, fight, people think active shooters happen in like a linear fashion. All right, I'm going to be able to run and then hide and then fight. That's what you're going to be dealing with. So just that right there, I'll teach you something new real quick. Instead of run, hide, fight, great program, my decision-making, my mindset, let's flip that around. Let's go fight, run, hide. Why? Because I want you to defer to fight first, because sometimes that's the only option you're going to get. Because if someone walks in guns blazing like that and you're trying to walk up that ladder of decisions, you're going to take a round in the chest before you even figure that out. Look at this. Active shooters take time to plan this stuff. 70% of the subjects spend a week or more. There's your shot clock. When someone starts preparing for an active shooter, based on the studies we see here, on average, happens at about a little bit more or a little bit less than a week's time frame. So if you observe one of these preparation indicators, guess what? Put a shot clock on there. That's about a week. The only way to disrupt violence is maximize that TTD, that time to defend. Look at this individual right here. This guy had a minute-by-minute written down plot active shooter, target list, people, how I'm going to kill people, minute-by-minute plot. The grandmother you see sitting on the back had the wherewithal, had the intestinal fortitude to look at her own son and go, you know what? I'm getting some weirdo vibes off this kid. And she starts rustling through his junk, finds his journal, and finds a full-on active shooter plot, minute by minute. And then if that wasn't enough, she takes that to the cops and goes, yo, this kid's about to pop off. Because of that woman's fortitude, because of her courage to be able to do that to her own grandson, that little monster you see right there didn't get to kill a bunch of kids that day. You never heard of this kid, you never heard of this shooting because it never happened. It got disrupted, and we maximized that time to defend all the way till it didn't happen. That kid, that shooter is like this chain you're looking at right here. It's glowing red hot, giving you the indicators. It's screaming, hello, look at me. And it oftentimes gives you, minutes, hours, days beforehand. All you got to do is reach out and break that one chain, and that active shooter event doesn't happen. So that's the mindset of the time to defend and understanding the attack cycle. What about nonverbals? Do you think someone who's about to walk into school with a gun and kill people and shoot people and murder people, probably for the first time in their life, and end up dying themselves, do you think there's going to be observable behavioral indicators coming off their body? Absolutely. Their body and brain is going to be fighting them every step of the way. They might have resigned themselves to death, but their body hasn't. So you're going to have things like leakage and sweating and biometric responses and all this crazy stuff firing off this person like a firework. And all you got to do is pay attention. Reddening of the face. When someone gets red in the face and they're not physically exerting themselves, that's a form of communication. Either what you did just pissed me off or made me embarrassed, or I'm really amped up right now. And then you look over at them and their chest is heaving a little bit and you have nasal flaring like a bull. Guess what? That person's amping themselves up to do a fight or flight right there in a survival mode, and you're just trying to catch up. People running at full sprint. The average human being can only sprint. I don't care how, strong you are. The only average human being can sprint about, full tilt about 8 or 9 seconds, maybe 10 seconds. So knowing that, just information about your body, if you see someone like those cops in that picture running full tilt for more than, 10 or 15 seconds, you should start following them. You should definitely follow them and ask questions later, because that's like nature's way of saying, follow me, okay? There's a lot of training out to have little modules on what gunshots sound like, and that's fantastic. You should definitely listen to those, what they sound like in different areas and different environments, and that's good. But on that time scale, on that attack cycle, where are we? If I'm listening for gunshots, we're right at bang. We're getting shot at right now. So left of bang, yeah, I want you to understand gunshots, but what about weapons manipulations, all right? These are hard metal objects. They're tools, right? So someone racking a pistol like that right there, cha-chink, that's a real distinct sound. That sounds real different than the click-clack of a shotgun. That's real distinct. And if you've been conditioned or you've been around guns your whole life, you could be at a Garth Brooks concert with 100,000 people. You will hear that click very distinctly if you're conditioned to know what to look for. You don't believe me? Clint Eastwood made a freaking movie about these knuckleheads. These 3 knuckleheads were best friends for life. They served in the United States military, and they were on kind of a buddies trip in Paris, France on a train. They're drinking beers, having a good time, haven't seen each other in a while. And one of these guys goes to go to the bathroom. He breaks a seal and goes to the bathroom, and he hears real distinctly the click-clack of an AK-47 cycling the bolt. And he goes, gee, sure sounds like an AK to me. He calmly waits, and then the door opens, and the guy standing there, he starts to waffle stomp him into the bottom of the train, and he calls his friends over, and it's like that scene in that old movie Airplane. We're just beating this guy into the ground. So, really sad day, really puts a tear in my eyes. So if you don't understand this stuff, you'll never be conditioned for it. But all you got to do is piss a little bit, and you can hear that stuff. It can key you off. This is one of my instructors. Hey, the active shooter stuff is not the only thing we do here at Emergence. I teach people the specific pre-event indicators of lots of violence. And my safe instructors are out there teaching our communities this stuff, our houses of worship, churches, things of that nature. And this is one of my instructors. He's a active shooter, active duty officer. And he pulled this one right here. It doesn't have to do with active shooter, but he starts talking to these individuals. One of the concepts we talk about is nonverbals and leakage, no fit situations, okay? If I'm nodding my head and being like, yeah, Dad, I definitely took that trash out, that's different than this. Yeah, Dad, I definitely took that trash out. What am I doing with my face? I'm telling you, I know I didn't. So that's a form of leakage, and that's what he saw coming off him, specifically deception indicators like patting the back of the neck and cleansing and all these verbal tics. And he goes, you know what? I have enough here for PC. Go ahead and come out of the car. And that's what fell out of the car behind him. It's like a clown cart of dope and felonies, okay? These ain't your weekend pot smokers. That is a felonious amount of criminal paraphernalia there, just based off leakage, all right? What's cool about leakage is most people don't even realize this stuff. So 99% of the population is walking around just giving this free information. How much are you paying attention to? Not much, I'll tell you that much based off a lot of the training I do. And then finally, the third thing to bring it home, the first two sections were about looking external, okay? First, we're going to understand the attack cycle and how to pick it apart and deconstruct it. The second portion being, okay, now how to spot for certain behaviors of an active shooter. Okay, I think that's a problem. Now we're looking internally. Now we need to focus on some of our software here, because your brain does some goofy stuff that can absolutely get you killed. Sometimes it's a defense mechanism like denial. Okay, there's no way I'm seeing what's happening right now. We have to hardwire that denial to not go that way. I want to build in a bias for action when you see things like non-standard observations, things you've never seen before or dealt with. There's absolutely a way to fight through that in your brain. But if you've never heard of them, don't even realize they're happening, you're not going to know. The rule of three is channel capacity. Do you know you're physiologically, your brain, you only have the ability to recall about 3 things in a stressful environment. If the shots are ringing out and you're trying to remember that kung fu move you saw on TikTok where it's like 12 steps to disarm somebody, guess what? You're probably going to get shot in the chest, all right? Because you can only remember about 3 things at a given time. You don't believe me? Stop, drop, and roll. Tap, rack, bang. When you're in trouble, who do you call? 911. There's probably someone screaming Ghostbusters in here, but you got to understand internally what's happening, because you're not going to be prepared for it. Like this individual right here, like Stephen Katzmirzak, walks into his college geology class with a 12-gauge shotgun. And he turns to the professor, boom, engages him right there on the stage, and he turns to the kids and starts shooting with that shotgun. No one gets up, no one runs, no one throws a chair at him or anything. They just watch him start killing people like it's going out of style. And he finally gets to the last round in his shotgun. He flips it up under his chin and he ventilates his brains all over the ceiling. Story's over. That's when everybody starts grunting and screaming out of the place. And they asked him after the fact, the survivors, they said, hey, why don't you run? What was going on? A bunch of them said, you know what? I thought it was a test. I thought it was a test. Not a very educated man, don't know what crazy kind of geology test that is, but that doesn't make sense. You know, some of them said, I thought it was a prank. Okay, that's none of that stuff is true. That's their brains going into hard denial. Do you think those kids woke up that morning and be like, hey, better be on the lookout for this active shooter? There are kids. They're supposed to be learning. They're not thinking about that stuff, nor should they be, even though that's happening day and age. Weeks before this active shooter event, this knucklehead goes out and gets these beautiful tattoos on his body, all brand new, all very, beautiful and flowery, right? Look, I'm not saying someone who gets weird tattoos like this is going to be an active shooter. That's just one data point in this big, long story. You got to put data points together and go A plus B plus C. You know what? Something's going on here. I need to start informing people.
This isn't an action movie, but real-time video of what a hero actually looks like. The just-released surveillance video from 2014 shows alleged Seattle Pacific University gunman Aaron Ibarra reloading his shotgun inside the school. 3 students have already been shot when, right there, John Meese, a 22-year-old senior at the time, dashes out in bare feet and pepper sprays him right in the face. Wrestling the gun from Ibarra's hands, Meese runs to put it out of reach. Then, amazingly, Meese
go back for some more.
Rushes Ibarra a second time, even though he's...
Whose kid is this? Whose kid is this that he goes back for more after beating him up? You think you could do what that kid did, that high schooler? You think you could pull that off right while someone's shooting you? Sadly, this is right of bang. That was an incident where 2 students had already been shot and killed before he jumped into action. But let me ask you, you think you could do that? Because I've been to war 3 times in my life, and I could look at a situation. I hope I perform as good as that kid there. But the sad bit is, like, you don't have to operate like that. We don't have to have our kids macing active shooters with a shotgun. This kid brought mace to a shotgun fight and won, okay? But you don't have to be that kid. Kids don't have to be. If we can see one of these indicators disrupt one of these behaviors, that person with a shotgun doesn't show up. If you don't see it coming, your only hope is to come up with a plan while you're getting shot at in the middle of a gunfight. Not a good place to be. So let's recap everything we talked about. We talked about understanding that attack cycle, understanding if we can maximize our time to defend, the active shooter doesn't get to the doors, or we get to lock the door 10 seconds quicker, 5 seconds quicker, 1 second quicker. All that time matters, especially in a dynamic event where people are dying. You want to identify body language. Look, your brain is a really sophisticated, machine that is just there to keep you alive. And when you fight that, when you don't want to be alive, it does certain behaviors. It will fire off Roman candles trying to get people to pay attention to it, and we can disrupt those. And the final one being internally understanding their brain can do goofy stuff sometimes, and you can arm yourself with the knowledge to not get into the denial trap and say things like, I thought it was a test, as people are getting shot in front of you. I want to build in a bias for action. I used to tell my Marines, if it's going down like the Alamo and it's like bad, and you look around and I'm not telling you something to do, you better go down screaming orders. I don't care if those orders may even make sense. You better come just be screaming your head off, because the 70% selling right now is way better than that 100% selling too late after the fact, after the active shooter event is over and people are laying there dying.